to buckle my shoe.
Today on Music Talk, we talk to Becca Stevens about her collaboration with the Attacca Quartet. There's lots to cover, so let's get right into it.
It's too bad you've broken the trust we had, and this one can't be mended with your words.
This record with that you just released with the Attacca Quartet seems to be a good jumping off point, I guess.
That's a perfect place to start because the violist of the Attacca Quartet is the father of this little girl that's just out of the frame, and he's the one that I've followed out to San Diego to watch him work on this production called The Aging Magician, and it's also where we met here in San Diego. This is back in 2013. We did a project together here called Mainly Mozart, where I was a featured performer and he was in a quartet that was playing my music. And so it's all full circle. Right.
And from just looking at the credits, it's very much a family affair. You got your brother doing arrangements, your father, your husband is playing on it, you're singing away. Yeah. So what are family dinners like and holidays? It must be very musical.
Very musical in my family and my upbringing. And yeah, it was kind of a beautiful thing. Stephen Prutzman, the composer who originally put together this project, he caught wind of the fact that my dad was also a composer and arranger and invited him out to San Diego back in 2013. And getting my dad involved in a project means that it's going to keep happening until it's documented and the job gets done. So
okay, I understand that.
Yeah, he's been passionate about this project since day one, and fate brought the project back into our lives a year and a half later. I think it was maybe almost 2 years later. There was just coincidentally, my brother was recording with a cellist, and the cellist brought a random violist to play in Winston-Salem, and it just happened to be Nathan again.
There you go.
That was when we fell in love, and also my brother and dad fell in love with Nate on that trip too.
Well, that's a good. That's all right. Then everybody's getting along. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this project. So how would you describe this project? This record that's just come out.
If you were to take the Becca Stevens band and remove the band and replace it with string quartet, that's in a nutshell. But by nature of the opportunities of the string quartet and the different textures and colors and stuff that you can get, it feels like my songs have gone on this magical carpet ride to another dimension. To me, when I'm playing them, I feel like I'm doing all the same stuff, but the world around me has changed completely.
Right. So does that, when you say you're doing the same stuff, but you can't be singing the same way? You're
right. I think whoever I'm playing with or whatever environment I'm in when I'm playing, it's going to affect how I'm singing. But I'm playing the same parts on the guitar. Maybe dynamically things are a little different, but I'm playing the same parts and I'm singing the same parts. But like you said, it's affected by the different environment.
Right. So the other person that probably looms large over this project is the poet Jane Tyson Clement, who has written many of the lyrics that we hear here. So, and I know you've written a book about her. So she's a big influence with you. For folks who don't know who she is, give a brief outline, if you will.
That's right. So Jane Tyson Clement is a beautiful poet, and she was very much, and I would say still is, an unsung hero as a poet out in the poetry world. During her life, she was known as a school teacher, and her poetry lived under her bed. And it wasn't until after she passed away that her community started to publish her poetry. And my dad's best friend came across a book called No One Can Stem the Tide,
right?
Which he gave a copy to my dad. My dad put a copy in my Christmas stocking one year, and 2 years later I opened it like a bad daughter. And,
at least you opened it.
Yeah, finally. And I had this like very serendipitous experience where I was looking for a specific lyric to fit the meter of a melody that I'd already written. and I wanted it to be about something very specific. And I opened the book and it was right there. It was the perfect thing. And so having gone through the rigmarole of being a part of Taylor Eigstein's setting of a Frost poem that was rejected by the Frost estate in the final hours. So I reached out to Plow publishing company and family, like some of them are her family members. And they said, not only yes, but use as much of her poetry as you want. We love having her poetry set to music. And they were so generous.
Oh, that's nice.
So from that sprang forth this beautiful relationship where, as you mentioned later, about 5, actually maybe more like 10 years later, they commissioned me to set a few more. So I had already done 2 or 3. They commissioned me to set a few more, and also to write the foreword and the commentary on a book of her poetry.
Cool. So what is it about her poetry that connects with you?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
That's my job. Come on.
It's your job. No, that's the perfect next question. So I'm kind of a sap for finding the spirit of things. And because Jane was a very devout Christian, I don't consider myself a Christian. I consider myself a person, though, who is hungry for the deeper meaning in life. And she was a very spiritual poet who managed to write poetry that was maybe for her Christian in nature, but for me reading it, I wasn't pushed that way. And I really appreciate that. I appreciated the fact that I could get through dozens of her poems without religion ever even crossing my mind.
Right.
It took me, instead of taking me to a place of sort of being distracted by religion, instead I was being invited into the depth of her experience with nature or love or whatever she was writing about. And I like to go to similar places in my writing, in my music, and in my poetry, and in my thinking. So I found, I found a kindred experience to her in that way. And then it turned out, when I was part of the book that we were talking about, which is called The Heart's Necessities, during my interviews with someone from her publishing company, I found out that we had lots in common, both living in New York and being sort of like a unlikely environment. And I don't know, I found her to be like a really fascinating person that I've loved getting to know more about.
So maybe we'll talk about one of the tracks that she's written. Tillery has got quite a backstory for you, I believe. So
absolutely, yeah.
Tell us about that.
No season of the soul strips clear the face of God. Save cold and frozen wind upon the frozen sun.
So Tillery, that's the one that I was talking about, where I was looking for a very specific text and I first opened the book. So Tillery is the last name of a friend of mine whose name was Kenya Tillery. And I knew her for a relatively short amount of time. I met her when she was battling with cancer, and she passed away, shortly after, but she made a huge impression on my life. And I remember when she left this planet, she left behind this sense of magic that I learned from her, like this sense of, how do I explain it? Like she really appreciated every moment that she had, that at least from what I saw, she had this lust for life that was very contagious. And I remember when she passed away that I made this silent promise to myself to write a song that would honor that, and that would like keep that memory alive, that would celebrate her and keep her memory alive. And it was a high bar that I was setting for myself because I wanted it to be perfect. And so I went through all these different versions of songs that were too sad or too slow or too sappy. And obviously was being extra judgmental of myself because I wanted to do a good job in her memory. And I had written kind of the back half of the song, which was about warmer seasons, spring, summer. And I'd written the lyric for that. And then I had a melody for the front half, but I was desperately seeking lyrics. And that was when I opened up No One Can Stem the Tide, the book that my dad had put in my Christmas stocking. And I just opened it up to a random page for inspiration only.
Right.
And saw the perfect lyric with the perfect number of syllables per line. And I was like, I kind of like looked up at the heavens and was like, okay, thanks, Kenya. Thanks, Kenya Tillery. Gotcha. And then reached out to Plow Publishing to use that poem, and the rest is history. And I, of course, was asking them if I could chop it up a little bit, because the front end is her poetry, Jane Tyson Clement's poetry, and the back end is mine.
Right.
And the poetry is actually from two different pages, which are side by side in the book.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, for the rock and roll fans amongst us, you do have a couple of covers, including one by Radiohead, 2 + 2 = 5. So I have to ask you about that and how that fits in with the rest of everything, and how you approach something like that and turn it into what you've done.
Because you have not been paying attention, paying attention, paying attention, paying attention. You have not been paying attention, paying attention, paying attention, paying attention. You have not been paying attention, paying attention, paying attention, paying attention. You have not been paying attention, paying attention, paying attention, paying attention.
Nathan, my husband, and I are both huge Radiohead fans. Both of us have been since youth. And when we did this first concert, 13, we needed an encore, and Nathan's kidding me. And so we bonded over that. He said, well, I have this instrumental arrangement of 2 + 2 = 5, but I've never done it with a singer. I don't know if you know that song. And I was like, heck yeah, I do. So we kind of winged it. And that became the encore of that set. And then over the years, it has, it's developed a bit, like the arrangement has developed a bit. For me, it's always been one of the awesomest arrangements in the set. I love what it brings out of me. Me to a place in my voice and in my performing that I feel like I don't go to very often in my own writing, which I don't know why that is, but it pushes me to this really fun, aggressive place. And I also like that I'm not playing guitar. He's asked me a few times, well, what if you play? And I'm like, no. I love that I don't play guitar on this one. Yep. It makes me feel really free. I feel like I can go to that place emotionally more effectively. But I just love Nathan's arranging. I love how he implements these kind of raucous, textural, extended techniques and things like that, getting these rhythmic scratches and clacks, and
Yep.
I love that aspect of his arranging.
You got to. I got to imagine that the guys in Radiohead would love it if they hear this.
Do you know Colin Greenwood has heard it?
Huh?
I think you might be setting. So Colin Greenwood apparently is a huge Attacca Quartet fan.
Nice.
And so he saw, I guess in my post, I tagged Radiohead, and he saw the post, and then he posted something on Twitter that was like, oh, I'm so honored the Attacca Quartet is covering our song 2 + 2 = 5. And then Nate saw that, and Nate lost his mind because he's been obviously a Colin Greenwood fan since he was a little kid.
Yep.
we all freaked out, and now he and Nate like message through Twitter, which is super
Nice.
cute. Yeah.
Of course it is. Love it. Love it. Now, I was watching a video of you guys performing For You, the Night is Still, and you're not playing a guitar there. You're playing something called a charango, I believe.
That's right.
But it made me think about, I know that these things have to be arranged, and you're not a rock and roll band. You're a string quartet with a vocalist. But do you improvise when you play live, or do you have to stick to the script, so to speak?
If love will go, if love will go.
There's a section here and there where things are more open, but I can't think of anywhere where we're adding bars.
Right.
There are definitely sections where like vocally I'm singing something different every time, especially like wordless sections and things like that. And For You, the Night is Still, I'm trying to think. Yes, the ending is a little bit loose vocally. What I'm doing at the end vocally is a little bit loose, but then the goal there is that Nathan and I meet in literal unison at the end. And so I know what I've written for him, because that one's my string arrangement. I know what I've written for him, so I find my way there, and then we finish together.
But you don't really jam.
Not in the literal
Gotcha.
sense of that term. I'm just pleased to see that the Attacca fans and the Becca fans are merging in this place that's working, that they're like happy with how these songs that, the hardcore Becca fans, I'm speaking about myself that way, that my fans who know these songs and have known them for a long time are happy hearing them in this other environment, and vice, and that the Attacca fans that tend to be more classically oriented are in support of and loving hearing them in this more kind of off classical realm. Gotcha.
Now, your previous album was Wonder Bloom, right? Which came out in 2020, and you got a Grammy nomination and all that stuff. So are you thinking what you're going to do next as far as that part of your side of your musical entity goes?
Yes.
Yes.
Funny you asked that, because I was just sitting in this chair yesterday, kind of doing a little bit of writing about that, trying to come up with like a description of what that is, which is a hard thing to do, as an artist before you've finished it.
Right.
But this is the first time I've like spoken it. I've only ever written it, but it's more like a story that, and it's very much related to Wonder Bloom. So thank you for opening it with that. But Wonder Bloom came out in March of 2020. So you do the math.
Yeah, I know what happened then.
Yeah. So Wonder Bloom.
Although it's pretty cool, because I'm here in New Zealand, you're living in Brooklyn or whatever. Everybody on the planet has this one common thing. When you say March 2020, we all go, oh yeah.
That's true. And there are little silver linings like that. Like, when you look big picture, how something is received in the year that it puts out is just a blip in the radar. But the pandemic of 2020 was a huge blip in the radar. People are going to remember that, like you said. And so there is something interesting there. And to me, initially there was this loss of gigs, of income, of exposure, but it was also mixed together with depression for this like really not about me depression, like seeing what the world was going through. And then on top of that, it's a little harder to say, but it's like relief. And I've talked to a lot of people about that, where it was like suddenly everything is wiped clean, and you have a chance to rebuild things in another way. And that was where the beginning of this next record, or this next project that I'm working on, started. So it was like this, everything gets pulled away and you're like, wow, where did it go? I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm scared for other people, but I'm also like kind of relieved, because what I had built was starting to feel insustainable, whatever the word is. It was starting to feel like too much, like I couldn't keep up with it,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people felt like that.
Yep. It's kind of hitting the reset button and
Yep. And
Yeah.
for some reason, that reset, for obvious reasons, I guess I should say, was like, initially it was like I was doing arrangements of what I was calling comfort songs. So like, I would think of a song one day, whether it was like a children's song or a beautiful song that I knew, and just find a sunny spot and just an old classical guitar that had been in my sister's attic for years, and just like going inward and finding a comforting space. And simplicity was a big thing too. It was like authenticity, comfort, simplicity, boom, which is in a lot of ways, it kind of the opposite of Wonder Bloom, which is like in your face, complex arrangements, complex production, trying to use the guitar as little as possible and go more production forward, more like dance beat forward, working from bass lines and drum grooves and things like that. And really working a lot in my DAW, like in GarageBand and Logic and Pro Tools, and like sort of almost like writing from the computer more than from the guitar.
Right.
So this feels like a flip-flop, unintentionally. I would say a flip-flop out of necessity, not out of intention.
Right. Yep. It's got to be great to be able to be. I'm jealous, because I hear you talk about being able to do that as a musician, and to kind of deal with stuff like that is amazing. So it must be quite a gift that you have to be able to
seeing
do
that shelf behind you.
Oh yeah, well, see,
yeah,
there is that.
I think you have found your own way to process. To process complex emotional transition. I mean, you don't have to be the one creating it in order.
No, that's true.
To get the benefits,
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. So there you go. But I'm fascinated with the process, and so when I hear you, it's just like, oh man, that's fantastic.
Oh,
have you ever been down to this part of the world, Australia and New Zealand?
God, I wish. I want to so badly.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have a friend there who I haven't seen in such a long time, and we both have babies now, and I would just love to see her. Yeah.
Yeah, we have an outfit called the NZ Trio. They're a string, it was a cello, violin, and piano, and they played up here, and we did a little video thing here, similar to your thing that it reminded me of yours. So yeah, if you ever make it down here, we'll set you up.
I would love that so much.
It would be awesome. Yeah. All righty.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you get back to the baby, because I'm sure.
Thank you. And there was one thing I meant to say when I was talking about the recording process. I meant to mention my brother's studio was where we did the Ovation Sound. I don't know what I left that out.
All righty.
He deserves a big plug for the hard work that he did.
Righto.
Yeah. Thank you so much for supporting this album, and I look forward to seeing you in your neck of the woods one day.